The movie is set in a dystopian America where a deadly pandemic has spread through some northern states. The strange thing about this pandemic is that anyone who speaks will die. A news report shows graphic images of victims, and a terrified woman records herself in a car with her daughter's mouth taped shut to prevent screaming. The government declares a state of emergency, advising everyone to stay indoors and turn off their phones. A few days later, parts of the country are decimated. In an underground metro, surviving passengers hide in train carriages, surrounded by blood and bodies. A crying baby causes panic among the passengers, who force the mother and child out, leading to their deaths. The movie then rewinds to where it all began. A group of archaeologists digging through uncharted caves in Pennsylvania, 1,000 feet beneath the surface. The Appalachian Trail. They come across a massive, never-before-seen dark chamber and begin to celebrate. However, suddenly, they hear strange noises coming from inside of it. Lo and behold, the researchers come under attack by unknown flying creatures who instantly kill them and fly out of the mine. The movie then cuts to a high school in Montclair, New Jersey. A deaf teenager named Ollie Andrews is waiting for a bus when she realizes that a bunch of douchebags are mocking her for being deaf. She ignores them and decides to walk back home. Ollie lost her hearing ability in a car accident 3 years ago. She also lost her paternal grandparents in the crash. She communicates with others through sign language, lip reading, and speaking. Meanwhile, a guy named Rob shows up and offers to walk her home. They both have a major crush on each other but always fall short of admitting it. At work, Ollie's father, Hugh, gets a call from his wife Kelly, who informs him that their daughter was again bullied at school. This upsets him, but there's not much he can do about it. Ever since Ollie lost her hearing ability, Hugh and Kelly have become very protective of their daughter and often have fights about it. Ollie lives with her parents, brother Jude, and terminally ill maternal grandmother Lynn. The Andrews family also has a pet dog, Otis. At night, Rob sends Ollie a fascinating video of a colony of what looks to be bats flying somewhere at 3 a.m. Kelly wakes Ollie up and asks her to come downstairs. She notices that her entire family is in the living room, glued to the TV, looking worried. All windows are closed and the fireplace has been covered by plastic. The TV is reporting that several U.S. cities are under attack by an unknown species of pterosaur-like creature, referred to as Vesps. They were unleashed onto humanity when some researchers blasted through an ancient rockfall that had been sealed off for millions of years. The creatures can kill humans in a matter of seconds and use noise to locate their prey. Because of this, the U.S. government has declared a state of emergency and asked people to stay indoors and be quiet. As everyone watches the news in horror, Ollie suggests that they head to the countryside, as it is both quieter and safer. Hugh agrees and everyone starts packing their belongings. One of his friends, Glenn, also joins them, and together they set out for the countryside. Later, Ollie and her family stop at a gas station to refuel their cars. She uses the opportunity to take Otis out to pee while Hugh tries to keep his son Jude entertained. Suddenly, he hears Ollie screaming and quickly runs to her. A man has held her at gunpoint and is demanding the keys to Hugh's car. Hugh was about to comply, but Glenn shows up to his rescue and shoots the robber in the foot. Terrified, the Andrews take the man's gun and drive away, leaving the robber to be killed by the creatures. However, before they can get far, the group comes across a massive traffic jam that's blocking all the interstate highways. Glenn proposes an alternative and they go off-road. While driving through the countryside, Glenn suddenly comes across a herd of fleeing deer. He quickly swerves his car to avoid a crash but ends up tumbling down the embankment. The Andrews immediately go to check on him and find him alive, but sadly, he is trapped inside the car. The family tries everything to save Glenn, including using a nut wrench to open the door and calling 911, but nothing works. At last, Glenn realizes that he is going to bleed out eventually. He asks Hugh to hand him his gun and leave with his family. Distraught, Hugh doesn't want to leave his best friend alone, but for the sake of his family, he agrees. Unfortunately, just as the family is about to leave, Otis senses something and starts barking repeatedly. This attracts the Vesps, and they attack the vehicle with tremendous intensity. Just when all hope seems to be lost, Glenn, who is still trapped inside the car, starts firing his gun to lure the creatures towards him. He manages to save the Andrews temporarily but gets himself killed in the process. All this time, Otis keeps on barking. Left with no choice, Hugh makes the difficult decision and lets the dog out of their car to die. The Andrews then realize they can't drive away in their car without attracting the Vesps, so they decide to abandon it. Hugh lights his car on fire to distract the Vesps and sets out on foot with his family to find shelter. They walk for hours and Lynn struggles to keep up, coughing and putting the family at risk. By evening, they come across an isolated house surrounded by a high fence and a locked gate. When they try to get in, the gate makes noise and attracts the Vesps. Soon, the homeowner also comes out with a gun, seemingly unaware of the current situation. She tries threatening the intruders, but the Vesps immediately swarm her and rip her apart. After the incident, Hugh looks around the property for an alternate exit and comes across a storm drain tunnel that leads into the compound. He ventures into the property first to make sure it's safe. After getting the green light from Hugh, Ollie and the others enter the tunnel. Inside, Jude comes across a rattlesnake which makes him scream and attracts the Vesps. The Vesps kill the snake but also bite Kelly's leg. With time running out, Hugh quickly operates a wood chipper to distract the creatures and shreds them to death. In the next scene, the family finally enters the house and cleans Kelly's wounds before going to bed. Allie contacts Rob and learns that his parents have been killed by the creatures. Worried, she urges him to leave the city, but before Rob can respond, the call disconnects. Meanwhile, amidst all the chaos and despair, a religious cult is on the rise, seeking new recruits and killing non-believers. The next day, Lynn examines Kelly's infected wound and realizes it needs antibiotics to prevent it from spreading. Hugh decides to find a medical store with Ally. After walking silently for an hour, they come across a deserted city and look for a pharmacy. Eventually, they find one, but it is dark, deserted, and stinking of rotten flesh. As Hugh collects the medicine, Ollie notices Vesp eggs growing inside human corpses lying around the store. Inadvertently, she makes some noise and alerts the creatures. Now, the duo is stuck inside the store with several Vesps. Fortunately, Hugh thinks of a plan. He silently lights a mop on fire and activates the fire alarm. The noise from the fire alarm and the water sprinkler distract the creatures, allowing the father-daughter duo to escape unharmed. Outside, they encounter a reverend who seems to have cut his tongue. He reveals himself as the leader of the cult that's recruiting people and killing non-believers. The reverend asks them to join his flock, but they refuse and walk away. They manage to safely return home with antibiotics, and Kelly begins to recover. The next day, Ollie informs Hugh that she watched the news at night, which stated that the Vesps can't tolerate intense cold weather. Hence, people above the Arctic Circle are surviving. Later that day, Ally tells Hugh about regions called the Grey, where electricity has gone out and people are isolated as their devices die, resembling a return to the Dark Ages. Meanwhile, the Reverend and his cult members arrive at Hugh's hideout. Again, the Reverend pressures Hugh to join their cult, but Hugh firmly refuses. As Hugh starts to go back inside, the Reverend stops him and writes a disturbing note that reads, "The girl is fertile." Hugh glances at them and returns inside. The Reverend and his followers assume Hugh will bring out his daughter, but he returns with a rifle instead. Despite knowing Hugh won't shoot due to the noise, Hugh removes the rifle's safety. Eventually, the cult members leave. Later, Ally receives a message from Rob, who says he's heading north to the refuge, a safe place from the creatures. Before Ally can ask more, she loses her phone signal at midnight. Hugh and Kelly wake to noises outside. Hugh checks the main door with his rifle while Kelly wakes Lynn and Jude. Hugh finds no one, but Jude sees a frightened girl his age outside. Kelly lets her in, and the Andrews family gives her a blanket. They ask how she arrived, but she stays silent. Kelly sees scars on her jaw, and Hugh finds she has no tongue, a member of the Reverend's cult, likely sent by him. The Andrews family have been set up. They check the girl's waist and realize she's been strapped with multiple mobile phones. Meanwhile, Ollie wakes up in her room and notices a phone taped to a cross on her window. The phone alarm suddenly starts to go off, attracting the creatures and freaking Ollie out. The phone strapped to the little girl also starts to go off, and the family scrambles to take them off. Hugh dumps the phones in the water while Ollie runs into the living room. As everything is happening, the creatures start breaking their windows. Hugh and Jude try to keep the Vesps out while Ollie and the others go into the basement to hide. Unfortunately, masked cult members had been waiting for Ollie, and they grab her from the basement. Kelly attacks the men, but they knock her down. The men carry Ollie out and the little girl also goes with them. Enraged, Lynn leaves the safety of the house and follows the men outside. She grabs 2 of the 3 men and signals Ollie to flee. Ollie obliges, and as soon as she reaches a safe distance, Lynn, still holding the cult members, starts screaming at the top of her lungs. This attracts the Vesps, and they rip the 3 humans to shreds. The rest of the family also comes outside but can only watch in horror. Just then, the Reverend shows up and abducts Ollie. Before leaving, he taunts Hugh to stay silent. However, taking advantage of the rain, Hugh, Kelly, and Jude quietly follow them and launch a surprise attack. An enraged Hugh strangles the cult leader with a rifle, but the Reverend stabs him in the waist with a knife. Summoning all his strength, Hugh gets back up and uses Glenn's classic headbutt to knock the cult leader down. Kelly takes out the other cult members and then helps Hugh by removing the knife from his waist. The Reverend attempts to get up again, but Hugh hammers him to death with the rifle. After the encounter, the Andrews family returns home while the tongueless girl walks away with her mother. The movie fast-forwards a few weeks where the family is seen trekking across the country. They initially arrive at the safe haven, the refuge. In the final scene, Ollie and Rob are hunting Vesps in the forest. The movie ends as Ollie wonders whether the Vesps will adapt to the cold and if humans will adapt to a life of silence, similar to how she adapted when she lost her hearing.